Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Gal Swisa Cohen, and on today's episode of the Israeli Bond on hmTv, my special guest, Shaked Zazon, will join me for a conversation about her childhood in Lud, a mixed city in Israel's social periphery, and how it affected her life growing up. So a couple of words about Shaked. So Shaked, she is 24 years old. She's a junior emissary in the Jewish Agency delegation in Long Island, and she's a part of the Randy Wolbe-Malinsky Center for Israel at C. Jacobson JCC. She is in her second year out of 3 years mission here on Long Island, when her main goal, same as the full delegation role, is to strengthen the connections and the bonds between the Jewish community here in Long Island and Israel. She today works in two main institutions, which one is C. Jacobson JCC, and the other one is Route 1, which deals with taking teens from all over the world and flying them to Israel for an educational delegations, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you so much for coming here today. I feel that our topic today is going to be very, very interesting, very close to my heart and yours also, because we're going to talk about Lud, the city that you grew up in. And it is a very special city from all sorts of ways. So can you tell us a little bit, the listeners and the viewers that are seeing us right now that maybe not that familiar with what is Lud? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So Lud is basically 5 minutes from the airport and 15 minutes from Tel Aviv. It's like in the central of Israel, and it's a city that basically have everything inside, and I will explain. So it's including 30% Arabs and 70% Jews, and more than that, there is Ethiopians, there's Russian, there's so many people from all around, and it's just like build such an amazing puzzle of all kind of the society, of the Jewish society and Arabs, and also Christian.
So it's a mixed city.
Exactly.
So basically 30% of the city are Arabs, and around 70 other percent are Jewish.
Exactly.
This Jewish communities comes from all different backgrounds, from Ethiopians to Moroccans to Ashkenazis, like many different.
Exactly.
It's like a very complex, or I would say diverse
Exactly.
backgrounds, but still 30% Arabs, which makes it a mixed city. And like at the general population of Israel, Arabs contains 20% of the population. So you can understand that in Lud, there are more Arabs than in regular, like general cities in Israel.
Exactly. So more than that, Lud is one of the most cities that have like such an historical background in the Bible and in all over. And I feel like Lud in general is something that have so much historic aspects about it. And sometimes I can look back and say, wow, it's like, it's just an amazing to grow up in this kind of city that you can actually feel so many aspects in terms of the population, but also it's just something that I really feel proud to say, even if nowadays it can be very complicated to say that I'm from Lud, because there is some problems inside that sometimes people from outside can say, oh, you're from Lud, so there's so many problems inside, and I will explain what does it mean. So the problem that people see from the outside is usually Lud in the news. Usually people hear about Lud as city with Arabs, with many problems about the Arabs, especially with drugs, with murders. But I will say it's something that have background about it. I mean, around the 80s, there were many collaborators, Palestinian collaborators that came to Lud in the 80s, and the main thing for them is to hide them in Lud. And since then, it was very, very challenging for them to be in the society. So many of them, it was very easy for them to get into those places that they can build themselves, so they will go to the bad places, and it affects.
So I just want to wait just to make this discussion a little bit more like to framework it. So as I said in the beginning, it's about a mixed city, but it's also in the social periphery of Israel, meaning that a periphery in Israel usually stands for a city that is not in the center. It's more of like in the south or in the north, something that is far away from the center. And usually it means that it has less places to work. A lot of the times the economic ranking there is lower because of that. And because of these issues, a lot of other stuff are going maybe the crime rates are higher because of this like low economic ranking. So Lud, even though it's in the center of Israel, right? It's in a prime location. It's still ranked low in economical, and it has a lot of reasons, as you said. It's historical. Some of it are not only historical, also because of the mayors that had to the cities along the years. But I'm more interested, not in the history of that, but I'm more interested. You grew up in Lud, right? Until what age?
So I grew up in Lud until, let's say, age 14. My grandparents are still live there. They have very strong roots and generation in Lud, especially there. I will say that they will always say, we will leave Lud, because usually, like nowadays, there's many families who left to Shoham or Modi'in, which is nearby, because they wanted to give themselves more opportunities. Usually people who live in Lud, not necessarily work in Lud. They usually work outside of Lud. Most of the times, like my grandma, she works at the
municipality.
Yeah, in the municipality. And my grandfather used to work more than 40 years in El Al. So it's interesting. I mean, I feel like my whole life they felt proud that they live in Lud. My grandma, she know basically everyone in Lud. She can walk on the street and everyone will recognize my grandma as someone that they know that helped to someone else. And I feel like everyone feel very respect for her. But besides of that, I will say that my childhood in Lud, it was very interesting. I grew up from first grade to 8th grade in the same school. It was 2 classes in the whole grade, from first grade to 8th grade. And it was so interesting to grow up in this kind of society. I mean, in the same class, we had Christian, we had Muslims. I just show you my picture from my bat mitzvah that you can actually see. Even like Muslims comes to celebrate my bat mitzvah. Christian, Ethiopians that are most of them were Jews, because at some point there were so many Ethiopians that came, actually did like Aliyah to Israel. So most of them, like many of them, went to Lud to actually live there. So Ethiopians and Christian, and I mean, I remember myself as a childhood that my Christian friends used to invite me to celebrate Christmas with them.
Really? And you celebrated it?
And my parents were like, they love to show me different kind of aspects, so they didn't let me. No, you can't do it. I didn't celebrate, but I did, like, so it was very interesting to see it.
Wow.
So I remember them like getting excited from Santa. And I was like, wow, it's like a huge different thing. And I remember me asking my dad, what is this? So it's a Christian, it's a Christian culture. They believe in Santa. We don't have Santa.
This is actually very unique because, you know, for me, I grew up not that far away from Lud. I grew up in Be'er Yaakov, which is like a very neighboring town.
Like 10 minutes.
But we didn't have this diversity. So basically, to live and to grow up in this so diverse area is kind of unique. And also the fact that you had Christians and Muslims in your school, in your class, makes it very different from a lot of other places in Israel. And I wonder if, as a child, you felt that Lud was different.
So I remember one point that I felt that Lud is different when, as I was a child, we're not really we live kind of like in a bubble, and I feel like this is what my parents want me to live in, like in kind of a bubble that nothing really bad happened. But I do remember that at one point I really wanted to visit my Muslim friend in Ramat Eshkol, which is a little bit dangerous neighborhood in Lud. And I remember that I was like telling to my parents, hey, I want to do homework, and my friend home. And my parents were like, no, we prefer you not to go there. It's a little bit of like dangerous neighborhood. We're not sure that we want you to go there.
But why was it dangerous? It wasn't because there was tension between Arabs and Jews, right?
Because in that specific neighborhood, the rank of bad things that happened inside was the crimes. It was just high, so it wasn't so like. It doesn't mean that I will walk there and something will happen with me. It was just they were afraid that something will happen anyway because
not because what I'm trying to say. It was not because you're Jewish walking in an Arab neighborhood. More so because this neighborhood specifically was a little bit with a higher crime rate, so they didn't want you to go there. But
exactly,
basically, they were okay with you being friends with your Muslim friend, and this diversity really came along really beautifully, if I can say that.
Exactly, and I must say that like usually like most of my friends that I left Lud, I realized that people from outside, they never really feel this kind of diversity when they go to school and stuff. And when I'm actually saying that I used to grow up with Muslims and Christian, and they were like, oh, really? So how was it? They're so curious to understand how it's actually work. Jewish lives with Arabs together, so it is very interesting. And like at some point, I feel like at some point I felt that there is opportunity that Jewish and Arabs can actually live together with no problems.
Yeah, I agree. This can sound surprising. And I want us to talk on this topic exactly later, but I also want to ask you, because we just said that Lud is in the social periphery of Israel.
True.
Meaning that socioeconomic ranking is low in compared to other places in Israel. Have you felt it? Have you felt the less opportunities? You said that many people go and they work outside of Lud.
Right.
Because of it. Have you felt it as a child? Was it something that was present in your life?
I will say that it is very hard to actually to go into places where you can actually be in a high position if you're like someone from Lud, because
Why?
and I will explain. Most of the time, people from Israel that I would say Lud, I feel like they see me as a different person kind of thing.
What kind of different person?
Because of the stereotype.
What stereotype? What stereotype?
So the stereotype about Lud is like everyone who grew up in Lud is like sort of like I don't know, like has involved with like crimes or something. But I do say like that most of my times, like I feel like I need to show myself even more than the others. And I know for sure that when I did tests for my army service, I know that this is something that it's not good for me to say that I'm from Lud. It's actually something that affects all the grades and all basically everything. But I do say it's never stopped me from actually achieve what I want to achieve from everything.
But have you felt it as a child? Have you felt that you live in a place? So you say that many people have stereotypes on people that come from Lud because of their high crime rate, maybe because of the bad social ranking. But have you felt it as a child? And if you haven't, when was the first time that you realized that? Because at the end of the day, when you went to do tests for the army, you did knew that maybe the fact that you're coming from Lud have some sort of will hold you back a little bit.
So to actually felt it, no one actually told me something or something happened. Because at the age of 14, we moved to a different place, and I felt that I sort of like build my teenager around like different environments, so it also affects me. But it's just it was something that until now I'm like, I feel like I'm not sure what I'm feeling about it. If it's like good or bad to say that I'm from Lud. Until now, I'm very debating with myself if it's good or bad, because I know that I'm proud about it, and I know that I'm always love to talk about it.
And you're proud of your childhood.
I'm definitely proud of my childhood. But I just don't like the stereotype that I see sometimes in people's faces that I'm always saying, the fact that there's people inside Lud that, for example, involved with crimes, it doesn't mean that everyone involved with crimes. There are me and most of my friends, we worked hard to achieve everything that we wanted. And that's what I know. I mean, I didn't know something else. Like, I know that this is also how my parents raised me. And I must say that I grew up in a nice neighborhood. In Lud, there's different kind of neighborhood. And I kind of grew up in a bubble until the age 14. I mean, I didn't know that there's so much of like drug negativities
in the city.
into the city. I mean, until the age of 14. I mean, you can call it romanticized or whatever,
No.
but this is like how I felt at some point. But then I realized that, oh wow, I mean, as you grow up, you understand that you actually need to do the research about the place that you grew up in, and you realize that there's like interesting aspect about the city.
Yeah, but I feel that in the end of the day, the city is what built you, and at the end of the day, you came here and you built quite an impressive trajectory. You're only 24, so you're still on your way, but this is your background, so I would not say that it's a bad thing.
Definitely,
because you're a living example of that.
Definitely, I never saw it as a bad thing, and I'm very, very proud about like who I am and like where I came from, because I know like that I came from such a amazing like place, and amazing childhood, and amazing values, and it's I must say that this is also something that I feel like it's interesting to talk about outside.
I agree. I definitely agree. But I want to take you now to Shomer Chomot operations. So Shomer Chomot operation, it was May 2021. It was one of the operations that between Israel and Gaza. Gaza attacked Israel with many missiles. Israel fought back, but what was different about this operation specifically is that for the first time we started seeing Israeli Arabs in a mixed city starting to uprise, starting to do many stuff in Lud, and in Lud also. So
Especially
do you
in
remember?
Lud.
So do you remember this time?
I remember this time clearly. And during this time, I was in the army. And it was like we were like in a special thing in the north to practice about like if something, it's called like nafgamim, and if it said that basically that if something like if something will happen, then what can we do? And they took like all like the like all like the soldiers from like the education unit to reserve soldiers to practice on us, basically.
Okay, so you were in the army.
Yeah, I was exactly. I was in the army, and basically they were saying something is happening in like something is happening. I remember we were in the bus and we didn't realize like what's going on. We started like reading the news, and we felt like there's something really big happening, that there's like violent like in all like the mixed city. And then like my parents started calling me like, where am I? And then my grandma started talking to me. And then I remember that the commander that were in the specific time, I didn't know them. Like they just like sent us to a mission in the north, and I was like, okay. It was like in the end of my service, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And then the commander was like, okay, we're not sure that you can get into Lud, into your city right now.
You needed to come back to Lud.
Yeah, you needed to come back. I mean, they stopped the operation. They were like, everyone needs to go back home. And
but you specifically, because
because I live in Lud, they say you're not allowed to get into Lud with your uniform. You can't do it.
Okay, why?
You can't do it. Because they say that if I will get with uniform to Lud, it was like risky that someone will attack me.
And this is something that never happened before, right?
And it's something that never happened before. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to do. And I just, I was like, okay, so I will just take off my uniform, which I'm very proudly of, and I will go back to Lud. And I remember that I get back, like my grandfather picked me up from the train station. And the train station was even like very dangerous area. So like, even then, like I remember it was like kind of like an operation to take me back home. And we weren't allowed to get out
of the
to
house?
the street after the
Why?
After the hour 8, because in that area at that time it's just like basically attacked everywhere except my grandpa and grandma neighborhood, and so we weren't allowed to get out.
And let me understand, these are people that lived around you your entire life. As you said, we just talked about it.
Yes.
There were any tension between Jews and Arabs. And then it happens. It was very surprising, I must say. I was also in Israel back in the days. And as I said, I came from a town that is really close to Lud. I also was in high school in Lud. I was also very surprised, but I wonder how it made you feel, because
it felt horrible, because my friends that was the point, that my friend from school started to upload to the social media Free Palestine, and they started to upload like to all over, like that they just don't want the Jewish here, and they started to upload stories that all like my friends from the back, I haven't spoke with her for a few years. Like more than 5 years, they start like to send me some stuff they upload to social media.
And what did you do when you saw that?
I was shocked, and I just unfollowed them. And I felt like that, okay, like I felt like we can live together at like until this point. And I just take back and said, okay, if they don't want me in my city, and they start, I really didn't know like how to feel in this kind of like situation, and I was just saying, okay, I will step back. That was my reaction.
Were things going back to normal afterwards?
I'm not speaking with none of them anymore since then.
But in terms of the city, Lud.
In terms of the city, you can still feel the trust issues.
Really?
Yes.
You think that up until today you will have trust issues
Yes.
because of 2021
Yes.
events?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes.
Give me an example.
So I remember it's just like you never know like what will happen next. That's the feeling. But I do want to say that it's just something that I'm as a person, I don't really like to not to finish with like an optimist way, but I do say that I see us live together definitely, but something must to change. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure what's the solution. But I do think that I definitely see a future together again, and as in my childhood. But now, especially after then, it was so like I remember it so clearly. My feeling that that it was very very like I like my neighbor like my grandma neighborhood like they're fine together. I mean, my grandpa loved his Muslim neighborhood and my Muslim
Loves his.
he loves his so, but still there's some fear that happened. But I feel like the feel it's more of the Jewish side less than the Muslim side.
I think it's mostly because you have the fear because you don't live there anymore, but your grandpa and grandma, because they still live there and they just continue living there.
So my grandma afraid, but my grandpa didn't afraid.
Yeah. So, I don't want to leave because we're about to wrap
Yes.
up, and I don't want to leave with a bad taste because at the end of the day, I think that both of us feel a lot of respect to Lud.
Yes.
In a way, I think that Lud has a very authentic view of Israel because it's a city that Jews and Arabs lived together. Maybe there were harder times and better times. But at the end of the day, and after October 7th, I think we also realized that. Because after October 7th, there weren't any uprisings of Arabs. And I do want to end with an optimistic note because at the end of the day, it was an event that hopefully will not happen again. And hopefully will gain trust again. And today, have you came back to Lud ever since?
Yes, of course. Of course.
And do you feel safe?
I am still debating. Like 50-50.
Okay,
50-50.
that's okay. That's okay.
I mean, people walk on the street safe. It's just my feeling back then.
Yes. Like it made a mark on you. And that's okay. Living in Israel is challenging and it's complex, but it's the beautiful of it. And that's the beautiful that we also want to reflect here on this podcast. So we're going to wrap up, definitely. But before we wrap up, because I really want to do like some very nice game, interesting game. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. It's going to be very, very short questions. You need to answer the first thing that comes in mind, okay? So pizza in Brooklyn or falafel in the Carmel Market?
Pizza in Brooklyn. Sorry.
Of course. Okay. Turkish coffee in small hot water, small glass, or an extra large coffee in Starbucks?
Extra large coffee in Starbucks.
Wow, you're so American.
In that point, definitely.
Okay. What is the one thing that you're most miss in Lud?
Oh, my childhood.
This bubble.
This bubble.
I agree.
Definitely.
And one thing, you're on your second year of your mission. You have 3 years. But one thing that you already know that you're going to bring back to Israel when you come back.
Bagels.
Oh,
Bagels.
Definitely.
For sure. I wish I could bring the Jewish community back.
All of them together.
Yes.
I agree. So thank you so much, Shaked, for this fascinating conversation about Lud, this complex city, and your childhood and how it built you to who you are. And thank you for tuning in to our conversation today. If you find this conversation interesting and you want to learn more, first, you're more than welcome to contact us in RCFI Director at sjjcc.org. And you're more than welcome to visit the other podcasts here on hmTV. Please subscribe, share, and feel free to contact at any time. And until next time, take care and be well.